This is Phoebe Langtry. Phoebe is 32 years old and she's a single parent. Her husband William has left her and their 2-year-old son, also called William, on their own. And this is no temporary separation. He has gone for good, and Phoebe knows it. William, her now estranged husband, had taken over the tenancy of Burseldon Windmill in 1787. And he and Phoebe had married later that same year. Young William had been born 2 years later. To begin with, all had been well, but times had become hard. Milling wasn't exempt from the difficulties facing life in rural communities at the time. And now it's come to this. But Phoebe is going to make sure that she and young William don't end up as paupers. The last thing she wants is for both of them to have to go to the poorhouse in Titchfield. She has heard stories of life in those institutions, children separated from their parents, little food and no real help to get out. She knows she would be able to leave if she wanted to, but leave and go where? Leave and do what? So Phoebe isn't going to let the small matter of a husband, or rather the lack of one, turn her into a pauper. Phoebe is made of sterner stuff. She is taking on the tenancy of Burseldon Windmill herself, husband or no husband. It was in 1768 that a certain William Fry had built the mill here, seemingly at his own expense and for the sake of the community, where such a convenience was much wanted. It was described as being built of brick and timber, which leads to the belief that it was constructed as a post mill, a common design for windmills in the 18th century, built upon either brick piers with a wooden trestle or on a brick roundhouse. But William Fry never actually worked the mill. He leased it to tenant millers, 4 of them in the space of 9 years. So it may well be that milling here wasn't a particularly profitable enterprise to begin with, despite it being much wanted. So in taking on the mill, what sets Phoebe apart is not so much the fact that she was a woman, or indeed that she was a woman on her own, but rather her obvious determination to succeed where others had failed and make a real go of the mill as a business. She had to borrow money from the then owner, gentleman and attorney at law Stephen Barney, some £200, so she needed to be making money. And when Stephen Barney decided to sell the mill to a local farmer, John Buckland, in 1809, he did so complete with Phoebe and the mortgage. And the now older, but still resolute Phoebe, was in no way deterred by this change of ownership. She stayed on and was responsible for the construction of a brand new mill between the years of 1813 and 14. And the new mill would be built to a new design, a tower mill, longer lasting but much more expensive. Here again, Phoebe proved how forward-thinking and determined she was, taking out a new mortgage to a value of £800, more than twice what it would have cost to rebuild a post mill. And all this in the face of a very real decline in the rural economy in Britain and especially in the South. Wages had decreased, unemployment was rising, and the price of grain had fallen dramatically. Most of the population were suffering from a lack of money to spend on anything. On top of this, there had been a succession of bad harvests, adding even more troubles to the rural economy. Of course, milling was in fact absolutely central to the life of the whole country, particularly rural life. Mills ground the corn that was an ingredient in one of the staple foodstuffs in the diet of the whole population: bread. Even so, take absolutely nothing away from Phoebe. She should be viewed as a very committed and successful businesswoman in her own right. But turn the clock forward to 1821, and after some 30 years of running the mill, records show she eventually gave up her mortgage to another new owner, John Buckland's son in fact, John Jr. We don't really know why, but maybe at the age of 62 she simply wanted to retire. But don't worry, because Phoebe's own son, William, took over the tenancy. William lasted here at Burseldon for 17 years, which wasn't bad, unless of course you compare it to his mother. But he eventually left as well, to move to nearby Droxford to become a grocer and a baker, so he didn't sever all ties with milling. The middle years of the 19th century were good to Britain and British agriculture. Burseldon saw millers come and go, but it remained prosperous, especially with now large acres of cereal crops being grown locally. In 1872, the mill was sold to its final owner, George Gosling. He had started work, as so many did, as a farm labourer, but like a good deal of the working population at that time, it seems he decided Britain's fast expanding manufacturing industry might earn him a better living. He changed trades and served an apprenticeship at Tasker's Ironworks near Andover. This obviously influenced his later thinking, because while working as the miller, he also established a sideline as a steam plough and threshing contractor, using the windmill site as his base. In 1882, George Gosling decided that the sails should finally stop turning at Burseldon. It seems the mill was in need of another major overhaul, and it was simply not commercially worthwhile. Milling stopped here that year. Over the years since then, the site has undergone many forms of restoration, most recently under the watchful eyes of the Hampshire Buildings Preservation Trust, ensuring that what was once becoming derelict would be preserved as an important part of Hampshire's heritage. This threshing barn and the granary, sitting on its raised staddlestones to prevent damp and vermin, are buildings not original to this site, but are typical of those that would have been here during its heyday. And proof that Phoebe made the right decision in 1813 to spend that £800 and build a tower mill is borne out by the fact that the mill you will see here today is that very same one.